Well, looking to straight shoot news. Tonight we'll be doing an episode of The Awakening, episode number 7. The planned destruction of the USA from within. We can prevent this, which is why I'm presenting you with The Awakening. So I'm your host, Dan Derailment. As we said in all our shows, there's going to be no resolutions in 2023. Just a massive awakening that will result in the resolutions in the future that will be beneficial for the whole human race. Just stay the course, remain confident, and be positive. So we're coming to you from the Merrimack Valley, Massachusetts, where a shot heard around the world was fired at the Concord Bridge to change the way the human race would be ruled or not be ruled by kings, queens, czars, and emperors. And they're trying to make a comeback now. So tonight you'll have another awakening as the political pendulum swings with a hypnotic effect, left to right, right to left, until all your rights are eroded away. Our defense, of course, is going to be the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights. Marbury versus Madison from 1803, which stated all laws repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. An unconstitutional law is not law. It confers no rights. It imposes no duties. It affords no protection. It creates no office. It's illegal, and it is legal contemplation as inoperative as though it had never been passed. From what has taken place today, that legal presence is more important than ever before. Now, don't allow yourself to be distracted by these carnival barkers. They're selling a false brand of hope by telling you someone and something is coming over the hill to save you and our future. Our future is in our hands. And that's what this document was all about in the way it was written. So tonight, everything we're going to bring to you should be brought to you under fair use laws. We're going to start tonight. But we need to get this Mayor Pete thing, Secretary of Transportation issue, out of the way. I've got some notes here, and I want you to listen carefully, because there's things that the mainstream media isn't telling you, or they're afraid to tell you. They may know, they may not know. But, we're going to clarify who and what he is and the role he's playing, and possibly a nation's demise. So there's some segments of a clip done just prior to President Trump showing up in Ohio, which basically shamed Mayor Pete to visiting the area in Ohio the next day with a train to road and dumped all the hazardous chemicals in their community. And the way they reacted and it was handled, it doesn't sound right. Something's really strange about that. So we're going to start, and I want to show you a quick clip. I think this one is from Tucker, and then we're going to move on and ask the questions. There's another agenda here on mission Mayor Pete is on. Roll this.
All of 2021, not so long ago, America's supply chains came close to snapping. Remember this? More than 100 cargo ships were floating idly off the coast of LA and Long Beach. Those are the two biggest ports on the West Coast. Those ships were filled with consumer goods bound for stores and consumers across the country, but they couldn't offload them. There's no place to do it. The containers just sat there. And in any case, thanks to the Biden administration's vaccine mandates, there weren't enough truckers to pick up the cargo and take it anywhere. So all of that combined to create the worst shipping bottleneck in memory, and it lasted for months. The price of transporting goods to this country rose by 600%. So if you're wondering why inflation started to go up, that's a big part of the reason. Now, none of this happened by accident. The bottleneck was a man-made disaster. and it could have been, should have been, fixed by the people in charge of transportation. They're called the Department of Transportation. But for much of the time this disaster was unfolding, Joe Biden's Secretary of Transportation, that would be Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana, was completely disengaged. He wasn't on the job. He was at home. He was on paid paternity leave, posing for selfies for social media. Quote, "It may be time away from a professional role, but it's very much time on." And actually it was time on television. Pete Buttigieg used his time to appear on various shows, including The View on ABC, where he spoke at length about his favorite subject, which is himself, not the container disaster. Meanwhile, the ships stacked up outside the ports and inflation went up. There was an emergency in progress and Buttigieg ignored it. Weeks after a train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, causing an actual environmental disaster throughout the whole region, he's taking more personal time. Professor, thanks for coming on. Wouldn't it be nice to see somebody pay some price for ineptitude and indifference?
Yeah, it would. He's jumped the proverbial shark, though. He's the epitome of the empty resume class. I mean, his only qualifications for the job were his identity politics credentials and the fact he went to Harvard and Oxford, and the media and the bicoastal elite gaga over him. But otherwise, Tucker, he had the un-Midas touch. Everything he's touched, whether it was the port crowding at our major ports, or the train robbing of trains going into the ports, or these recent 4 accidents where airliners almost crashed, or the Southwest implosion, or the whole meltdown during the holiday season of our airline system, or these rail car, everything he either ignores or he offers these platitudes. And how ironic that right on the eve, or right in the midst, I should say, of this tragedy in East Palestine, of this white working class tiny community with an average income about $45,000, he was lecturing the nation that white hard hats don't look like the community they are working in. And that's not true. It's not only that is he pandering, but he's often inaccurate and ignorant. Here in California, most of the construction workers you see on the elite coast are Hispanic, and most of the residents are white upper class people. That's just the way America works. But he always tries to, in lieu of actually doing something, he always tries to have a rhetorical or an abstract victory. And I think people finally just feel, they're tired of him. And he's afraid. He talks very bold and like he's bold and he's dynamic, but he's very cowardly because he's afraid to go in and confront these people and tell them why FEMA wasted 2 weeks before they addressed their concerns and why he hasn't been there. And we know the reason is that he doesn't want to sit there and talk to people when they ask him questions he can't answer. And so he's just sort of what this entire cabinet is, that this cabinet was either predicated on being an identity politics first in their field, so to speak, or they were candidates that pulled out and gave the nomination to Joe Biden. But otherwise, none of them had any demonstrable experience or expertise in the field that they were supposed to serve us, the people.
That's right. It's just a little bit funny. They've been lecturing us now for 2 years about something called environmental racism, and then there's an actual environmental disaster in the midst of a community of people who didn't vote for them, and they ignore it. That actually does look like environmental racism to me.
It is, and the reason is that East Palestine is right on the border of Pennsylvania, and it's in Klinger. It's the very area that in 2008 Barack Obama blasted as they cling to their religion. And then we know how Joe Biden has called Trump supporters chumps and dregs, and we know the irredeemables and deplorable vocabulary of Hillary Clinton. So they have a long record of disparagement of the white working class. I don't know why they think they can just get away with it so easily without some kind of reaction, but it is racist. And if this was in Malibu, or this was in Martha's Vineyard, or even in Compton or South Central, there would be an immediate U.S. government response by this administration.
Right. Among the rich or the fashionable poor, but these people fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that was interesting. But, Victor Davis Hanson doesn't get much wrong. He's pretty well studied. But he's way off, in Mayor Pete. Well, maybe doesn't recall or wasn't paying attention. Just stay tuned, and we're going to show you why. But the question is Mayor Pete really afraid of confronting people? Just a person of identity politics? Or is there another agenda or mission he's on? So in this next step, we're going to listen to what the liberal media had to say about him when he was running for president against Joe Biden. And then we will expose some information about Mayor Pete that surfaced at the same time that the media back then and today are ignoring. And then you got to ask yourself, why? So let's start this and let you watch. Watch closely and pay attention.
Care enough to pretend he cares, wound up with one of the most important jobs in the Biden cabinet, a job with actual responsibilities. How did he do that? Well, we know what the answer is. No, Pete Buttigieg doesn't know anything about transportation. We would bet money he can't drive a stick shift. On the other hand, Pete Buttigieg is gay, he plays the piano, and he speaks Norwegian. Let's hire him. Watch.
There he was yesterday, front and center, now third in the polls with a speech that many have said are historic.
He's inspirational so far, and that's something that voters absolutely want.
He has this appeal for a lot of reasons. He is a veteran. He is openly gay. He is from Indiana.
You are a concert pianist. You speak many languages, including Norwegian, that you learned because you wanted to read a book.
The second coming of Obama, huh? We'll see about that. My prayers may have been answered if that's true.
The draw to this point has been young, fresh, positive, and a change agent.
This guy is chicken soup for my soul.
Well, as he explained to a Daily Caller reporter last night, he's taking more personal time.
What do you have to say to the folks in Ohio, East Palestine, who are suffering right now?
Well, I'd refer you to about a dozen interviews I've given today, and if you'd like to arrange a conversation, be sure to reach out to our press office, but I'm happy to have that conversation with you. Just walk
You don't have a message for them?
I do, and I shared it with the press many times today. I'd refer you to those comments.
Would you mind sharing it with us?
No, I'm going to refer you to the comments that I made to the press because right now I'm taking some personal time and I'm walking down the street.
Are you going down there?
What's that?
Are you going down there at all?
Yep, I am.
When are you going?
I'll share that when I'm ready.
Okay,
I'll talk
thank
down the
you.
street.
Can I get a photo of you? Have you seen that done at all? Remember when they were harassing the Trump, his administration at the restaurants? Not one of them asked to get a photo with these people. Who is Pete Buttigieg? And look how politely he asked for the photograph. His reaction to a constant question. He looks like he's annoyed, but maintains a cool, calm demeanor.
I'm taking some personal time. Not just a robot, but a nasty one. Could I get a photo of you? And then he did. Now you wonder what Pete Buttigieg is going to do with that photo. Makes you shiver a little bit if you think too much about it, so we're going to stop.
Well, let's look. This is a fitness and counsel record. Buttigieg, Peter, Paul. This is what came out during the presidential election about Mayor Pete. Who leaked it? We don't know, or even know why it was leaked, but it may be relevant to bring up again, considering what has transpired. So it appears Mayor Pete is not just a mayor from South Bend, Indiana, and was an intelligence analyst for the U.S. EUCOM, or U.S. European Union Command, NATO, and was deployed in Yugoslavia and in Africa, which is something you would think a person would be proud of, being of service to the country and playing such an important role. Well, obviously, it don't seem like they wanted to bring it out, but truthfully brought this out. We saved it because we thought it might be important in the future. So it emphasizes at that time, you can see he was referring to the Horn of Africa, Malta, Libya, and Yugoslavia. And it is relevant to what is taking place today. I'm not into drama, so I don't claim to know. but we felt it was interesting for now. Another question should be, should that reporter be concerned by the way he looked at her? Because he was annoyed. But the whole question is, was he trained to react the way he did? Cool, calm, collective. And the photo is what really should make you wonder if she needs to be concerned in the future. But we don't know, only time will tell. So with that being said, we're going to see if she gets any more airtime with mainstream media, because mainstream media doesn't seem to be wanting to bring up the fact that Pete Buttigieg was once an analyst. For who? The CIA, most likely. Maybe that's why not one commentator on mainstream media will bring this fact up. But we're bringing it to you as food for thought. Just something to think about. That's why we asked the question. What is his mission? He's definitely not qualified to be Secretary of Transportation. Victor Davis Hanson may have it wrong, and Tucker may even have it wrong. I bet you he can drive a stick shift. With that being said, let's see what Tom Massie has to say about all these intelligence agencies and what his committee is doing. Go ahead, roll that.
Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie tells One America News that the Government Weaponization Committee had a strong first showing. One America's John Hines has more from Capitol Hill.
This is the first hearing of the weaponization of government hearing. It's a select committee. What is your takeaway from this first hearing, sir? Is the committee making progress? Is it on the right track?
I think it's a strong first showing, not in a partisan sense, but the first panel was a little bit partisan, especially Raskin's litany of grievances against Trump. That's what I hope we don't do. I hope we don't try to relitigate Trump and I'm not even myself that particularly interested in the Biden aspect of it. Those things change with administration. I'm more concerned about the things that pervade everything here and don't change with administration. The weaponization of institutions, the politicization of institutions that doesn't change when the elected leader changes. So I feel good about this first hearing. We had two excellent witnesses who worked for the FBI, had careers at the FBI. I hope there will be other people who see their testimony and the seriousness of our committee, that it's not just some partisan witch hunt, and who will be compelled to become whistleblowers.
You mentioned an example of what I think you consider weaponization, something called reverse targeting. What is that, and why do you feel that's an example perhaps of weaponization?
We have a lot of spying tools that were built ostensibly to go after foreigners who are overseas, but they've been turned inward. We've taken these weapons that were designed to keep our country safe and pointed them at our own citizens. One of the career FBI folks in there, Mr. Baker, explained how Brennan himself admitted that if he wanted to get information on an American, he'd pick a foreigner close to that person.
He was the former CIA director, right?
Yes, Brennan, the former CIA director. He would pick people close to that person who didn't have constitutional rights to collect information on the American. So that's reverse targeting. You are targeting somebody near the person you really intend to target.
A clear example of abuse, perhaps, and weaponization, perhaps, right?
It's a weaponization of tools that were designed to protect this country, not to spy on Americans. And I brought to light the FISA 702 program as well, where exabytes of data are collected incidentally on Americans, and then the FBI and other agencies say they don't need a warrant to go in there and to look at that information. But when you incidentally collect the entire universe, then I think it's a hard argument to make that you don't need a warrant to go search it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Well, that's interesting. Now, think about this. They don't need a warrant to collect your data, a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights. They just take whatever they want a tool that Tom was being very diplomatic about, but many have warned about, Section 702. People have been screaming about repealing that for years because they will abuse the FISA courts. They've already proved that. We saw that take place. Brennan did it, and they've all done it. They started spying on Americans, like a connection to anybody. If you even talk to somebody who's caught up in this, like you said, they collect just massive amounts of data and they store it away. That's not what this is all about. You have a right to a reasonable amount of privacy. And I think it's reasonable to think that you should be able to talk to somebody without having the government collecting all your data. They're collecting this right now. I can guarantee that. And it's not because it's me saying this, because they're collecting everybody's data. They're spending billions of taxpayers' dollars to spy on our own citizenry. So why do we need this weaponization of federal agencies? And these FISA courts are a complete failure. That's proof. It's not a theory. It's a conspiracy. So here's a warning now. We're going to end this segment here with a warning from Senator Church, Frank Church, from back, I believe it was 1975. And we put a bullseye together from Straight Shooting News on this. He was interviewed on NBC News back then. And he gave a warning to the country and the world about what would happen if this power was ever abused. And now we're at the point, like Tom Massie said, we have a committee to try to see if they can prevent the abuses of what they've developed. Roll this bullseye.
Let me tell you this. In the need to develop a capacity to know what potential enemies are doing, the United States government has perfected a technological capability that enables us to monitor the messages that go through the air. I know the capacity that is there to make tyranny total in America. And we must see to it that this agency and all agencies that possess this technology operate within the law and under proper supervision so that we never cross over that abyss. That's the abyss from which there is no return. But let me tell you this. In the need to develop a capacity to know what potential enemies are doing, the United States government has perfected a technological capability that enables us to monitor the messages that go through the air. These messages are between ships at sea. They could be between units, military units in the field. We have a very extensive capability of intercepting messages wherever they may be in the airwaves. Now that is necessary and important to the United States as we look abroad at enemies or potential enemies. We must know. At the same time, that capability at any time could be turned around on the American people. And no American would have any privacy left. Such is the capability to monitor everything. Telephone conversations, telegrams, it doesn't matter. There would be no place to hide. If this government ever became a tyranny, if a dictator ever took charge in this country, the technological capacity that the intelligence community has given the government could enable it to impose total tyranny. And there would be no way to fight back, because the most careful effort to combine together in resistance to the government, no matter how privately it was done, is within the reach of the government to know. Such is the capability of this technology. Now, why is this investigation important? I'll tell you why. Because I don't want to see this country ever go across the bridge. I know the capacity that is there to make tyranny total in America. And we must see to it that this agency and all agencies that possess this technology operate within the law and under proper supervision, so that we never cross over that abyss. That's the abyss from which there is no return.
The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, as ratified by the states, December 15, 1791, the preamble. The Congress of the United States. The conventions of a number of the states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire, in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that any further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added, and as extending the ground of public confidence in government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. This is called inalienable rights. These cannot be taken away, which is why our founders put in the checks and balances, with the final end being in the Bill of Rights. The final checks and balances is in the hands of we the people, to ensure these rights should never be taken away. So to counter what Senator Church said in 1975, our founders put the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. And now we must ask ourselves, do we want freedom or tyranny? There's the question that we all have to ask ourselves today. Did they stutter? They were very clear in writing this, the Constitution. They put the Bill of Rights in because they foresaw that they weren't going to be around, and their attitude wasn't going to be around in the future. Inalienable rights, rights that can't be taken away. We have people being held in the Washington jails right now, January 6th, with no trial, no speedy trial. They're all being violated. And the intelligence agencies, imagine the capabilities that they have today. If Church was that concerned back in 1975. So that was a caution. You know, Church, that's the Church Committee, formerly the beginning of what is now the United States Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence agencies. And that's what Tom Massie was talking about. He was talking about this. So we've seen how far we've come since then. You know, what's going on here, you know, and the abuses by the Central Intelligence Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now we have the Internal Revenue Service, which is trying to weaponize, and the GOP committees in the House are trying to stop this. They want to stop the funding. They're coming after we the people. It's no joke. Your rights are being violated, your inalienable rights. Which is why we asked this question, is this a planned destruction from the USA within? Because it appears to be. And by the way, here's some additional information on Mayor Pete that came out during his presidential run. Information also came out about Mayor Pete also being able to speak Farsi, which is the Iranian language, and it's common for agents to serve in the Northern Africa region. He was there at the same time as the former Assistant Director of the FBI Counterintelligence Division, Peter Strzok of the FBI, was known for his investigation into Hillary's emails, the Russian collusion narrative to impeach Trump. Now, let that all try to sink in. It's a lot of information, and it's not drama, it's all factual. So you got to ask, what's really going on in this administration? Warning signals are going off everywhere. Now, we don't have time right now, but if you need to be refreshed about Strzok, we got a clip here, and we'll post it in the video, beneath the video and the links. It was a puff piece that was done with Strzok, who tries to play the victim instead of the lying aggressor. And it shows that he's still lying about it. If you want to watch the piece, like I said, we'll give you the link. And also should make you think about, was Mayor Pete trained in the same manner? With that, we're going to conclude part 1 and stay tuned for part 2. It gets even more interesting.